You're listening to Saturday Morning Media. And now, back to our show. The Cauldron of Hate, a story by Baciocco. Chapter 17. Suprema returned to the Tower of Good after saving a busload of Dacians that were about to go over a cliff on their way to a dog show. Going from supersonic speeds to a stop in a fraction of a second, she touched down gently on the landing pad outside the rec room. The sliding glass door opened as she walked towards it, and once inside the room, she found the mighty ranch hand and J.Y.S.O in deep conversation. They saw her and immediately dropped their tones, and then went silent. She stopped, and her eyes narrowed as she looked at them. "What?" she said, her words dripping with ice. The mighty ranch hand removed his hat and began wringing it in his hands. He looked over at J.Y.S.O. "Well, tell her." J.Y.S.O looked at the mighty ranch hand with a look that would have killed. He looked back at Suprema and cleared his throat. Well, Suprema, while you were gone, the decision was made on the Cauldron of Hate." "And," she replied, the word freezing the room even more. Well, J.Y.S.O stammered, "they have decided that the Cauldron of Hate could continue coaching." "What?" Suprema yelled, the ferocity of the noise instantly shattering the flat-screen TV that hung on the north wall. The sound of falling particles of the television filled the room for a good minute. Suprema never relaxed her gaze on the two heroes and crossed her arms. "One of you better start talking, or both of you will wind up like that television set. How are the bad guys winning this? They are the bad guys." "Well, ma'am, you see, they had a public hearing on it," the mighty ranch hand replied. He related the whole story of the hearing, the testimony of the kids, their parents, and the coach. "I knew there was something about him I didn't like," she interjected. The mighty ranch hand continued, telling Suprema about the Cauldron of Hate not technically breaking the rules, and then ended by informing her that, if they wanted, they would be allowed to return to coaching the Saddle River City Death Race. Suprema was silent for a moment. Then, moving her hands to her hips, said simply and quietly, "This cannot stand." "But it is, Suprema," J.Y.S.O said. "They have made their ruling. The judge agrees. Technically, they aren't doing anything wrong." "They are villains. They are always doing something wrong," she replied. "I'm not saying I disagree with you, but according to the law, they aren't, breaking any laws. We can't do anything." "Oh, yes, we can," Suprema replied immediately. The mighty ranch hand took a step forward. He was shaking, but ready to lasso Suprema if she began to go vigilante on them. "No, we can't. We can't just go down to that field and beat them up or arrest them. There's no jail that would take them. They aren't doing anything wrong." A smile slowly crept across Suprema's face. Her eyes blazed pure white heat. "Oh, we're not going to beat them up. We're just going to beat them." Then, in a flash, she was gone, back out the sliding door and into the sky. The mighty ranch hand turned to J.Y.S.O. "We'd better follow her, see where she's going." Chapter 18. 2 days later, it was Saturday at 11 a.m., and the Saddle River City Death Rays were warming up for their match against the Hayward Hayseeds. The majority of the team was kicking balls through a slalom course of the Plant Lady's ferns, while the Blinding Skull looked on, occasionally barking out an order or two. At the goal, the living lump worked with Aris, kicking balls softly towards the diminutive goal keep for him to block. "I'm glad you're back," Aris said between breaths. "Well, we weren't even really gone. We only missed one practice," the living lump replied. Aris bounced a ball back towards him with his head. "I know, but I thought you were going to be gone for good." The living lump sent another ball sailing towards the goal. "Yeah, me too. I'm glad we're back too." "I just hope we can focus on the game," Aris said, sending the ball back with a kick. "We really need to focus." The living lump nodded. "You're a good team. You'll be fine." Suddenly, there was a sonic boom, and Suprema landed in the middle of the field. The players, coaches, and parents across all of the park's 4 soccer fields froze, fearing some sort of showdown. Suprema walked directly up to the Blinding Skull. The Plant Lady and the living lump moved to back him up. The Blinding Skull smiled. Ah, Suprema, so nice to see you again, though you are interrupting my warm-ups. Could you please move from the field? Suprema stood glaring at the Blinding Skull. Look, the Blinding Skull continued, I don't mean to be rude, but we're doing nothing wrong, and you're currently wasting these kids' time. Say what you're going to say, and leave. I have a game to coach. So do I, Suprema said slowly. The Blinding Skull looked confused. What? I'm here to coach my team, she continued. Your team? What are you talking about? You can't take our team away from us. The J.Y.S.O said we could continue to coach the Death Rays. Suprema smirked. Not this team. She looked around at the players. I would want nothing to do with this team. The League of Good are now official coaches of a J.Y.S.O soccer team. The Blinding Skull was a little nervous now. He adjusted his collar. What team is that? He asked. Suprema smiled and pointed across the field. Them. Everyone's gaze followed Suprema's finger, and there, standing next to the mighty ranch hand and LXO, were the team known as the San Mateo Bearcats, the best team in the league. The Bearcats? The Blinding Skull asked. Suprema looked back directly into Skull's eyes. They were the Bearcats. They are now the Saddle River City Heroes, and they are going to win the league this year. Just thought you should know. With that, Suprema turned and crossed to her team, and they all walked to their scheduled field for their game. The Blinding Skull, the rest of the Cauldron of Hate, and each of the Death Race players felt as if they'd just been punched in the stomach. Despite the shocking news that the League of Good were now coaching their own J.Y.S.O team, and that they had taken over the best team in the league, the Saddle River City Death Rays had played well. They'd beaten the Hayward Hayseeds handily, 3-1. Their victory was short-lived when, as they were packing up to go get milkshakes, Suprema took to the sky and, using her flame trail, wrote the final score of the Saddle River City Heroes game in the sky, 4-0. The Blinding Skull was livid. For once in his life, he was in the right, and now someone was bullying him around. Chapter 19. The Plant Lady and the Living Lump winced as a glass shattered against the wall of the kitchen of the Hate Pit. The glass falling to the floor was accompanied by a frustrating yell from the Blinding Skull. How dare they? How dare they? He yelled, slamming his clenched fist down on the counter. For once, we are in the right here. We are doing everything by the book, and they just have to step in and ruin it. I know it is unpleasant, the Plant Lady said softly, but technically they aren't doing anything wrong. Technically, I don't care, the Blinding Skull said immediately in reply. There's no reason for them to be doing this other than to get us. The Bearcats have a coach. Nothing happened to her. The Living Lump stopped slurping his fifth milkshake of the evening. I heard that she's staying on as the assistant coach while the League of Good take over. The Blinding Skull's brain flashed in his skull. You see there? They aren't even really coaching. They are going to let her continue to coach and just stand in as figureheads so they can say that they beat us. The room plunged into quiet. Softly clearing her throat, the Plant Lady said, Whatever the reason, and I happen to agree with you, Skull, they are still not doing anything wrong. Now we can sit here all day and whine and cry about it, or we can do the only other option we have left. Which is, the Blinding Skull said, looking at her. Get the Death Rays ready to destroy the heroes when they finally meet on the field, she said with a smile. You want to beat the League of Good? Beat their team. The Blinding Skull's brain began to blow with bursting pops of light as his synapses started firing. A smile slowly crept over his lips. Yes, he said, you're right. To beat the League of Good, we need to beat their team. Not only beat them, destroy them, the Plant Lady smiled. And to do that, we need the most powerful weapon you have in your arsenal. Weapon? The Blinding Skull said, confused. Well, I guess I could drag out the laser hammer, but they're still children. I'm surprised you would suggest that. No, the Plant Lady said sharply. The most powerful weapon you have. The Saddle River City Death Rays. The Blinding Skull was still confused. The Saddle River City... Then he got it. Oh, yes. We will destroy them on the soccer field with our team. The Blinding Skull walked over to the window in the kitchen and hoisted it up. Sticking his head out of it, he took a deep breath. The smell of garbage from the dump filling his lungs, he used that disgust to fuel his yell. League of Good, the Death Rays are coming! You've been listening to the Cauldron of Hate. To download a PDF of the chapter you just heard, visit cauldronofhate.com. The Cauldron of Hate was written by Grant Baciocco. The story was edited by Liz Brown, and the audio was edited by Steven Staver. Music by Dan Ring. Special thanks to all the Saturday Morning Media Patreon patrons who make this content possible. And a special mention to those who supported the producer level, including Dorothy Baciocco, Eve Cunning, Kathy Crawford, Tony Urbano, David Akers, Jamie Donmeyer, and Vicky Sebring. To find out more about becoming a patron, visit patreon.com/Saturday Morning Media. This episode is copyright 2021 Saturday Morning Media, Grant Baciocco executive producer, all rights reserved. www.saturdaymorningmedia.com. You've been listening to Saturday Morning Media. Stay tuned, we'll be right back.